blast off. I got something in the mail today. Let's see what this is. Ooh, this is called open boxing, kids. Or unboxing. We'll get it together. Jennifer Juniper. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? And Jenny Boyd, look what she did. I have a signature right there. Oh, that's a wonderful thing. I think we should talk to her today. Right now. Bam.
It's coffee talk with Adika. Nothing rhymes with that but chicken tikka. We name drop here with Stephen and all his friends.
Let's welcome to the show the author, the beautiful Jenny Boyd. Hi, Jenny. Look what
Stephen.
Look what I got today. Today in the
It
mail.
arrived.
It did arrive, and here's the crazy thing. It arrived right now, right when you signed on. We got the book. Exact. It's like the gods were working with us today. This is a fabulous story. It's actually a wild story. You have some story. I don't know how you fit it all in this little book, because you took a mini series over here, you know, but it starts out, I mean, for everybody, if you don't know Jenny, you're under a rock. Jenny, first of all, your story with the Beatles, that was a big experience that you had going with them. 67, the Maharishi, the whole experience, that's a whole story in itself. But this is your whole story about being a child, getting into modeling, your marriage with Mick, meeting Mick at a young age, Mick Fleetwood, for everybody that's watching out there. Tell us about this book, you know, your journey here. And also it's a heavy story with your relation with your father too. And there's a lot going on here. I don't even know where to start with it. Help me.
There's a lot going on, and it took me a long time to write because things kept changing, like with the story about my father, who I never really knew because we grew up in Africa, and he was a very traumatized man during the Second World War. He'd been a bomber pilot, and he and his crew, he was flying it, they were just taking off, but the plane in the opposite direction had been given the green light as well, and so of course they collided, fully bombed and everything ready to go. So his plane, both planes, just this huge fire, and pretty much everybody got burnt. There was just him and I think one other guy. He fell out of the plane and he got, you know, he was very burnt in his hands and everything, but he survived, but very traumatized. So by the time I came and we moved to Africa when I was about just a few months old, I just remember him staring at walls. You know, he had PTSD. They didn't know how to treat that in those days. But anyway, my mother left him, eventually remarried. And when I came to England, I had this new stepfather. My mother was pregnant, about to have a baby, because we'd all been left behind in Africa. But and I never heard from him again, never saw him again until such time when I was living in LA and the whole rock and roll bit had sort of finished, and I decided I needed to go to college and get some degrees. And while I was writing some papers I was doing a counseling psychology master's, they asked you about your life, and I suddenly thought, I'm going to try and contact him. So I think I must have been in my maybe late 30s. And finally, I did find him, but we were all secrets because he'd married again and he'd never told his children that he'd got other children. So it was this sort of search for my father. And when I did finally meet him, which was about 3 years later, he was really horrid. His wife had left him, and basically he kind of came on to me, which was awful. You know, he was this man I've been longing to meet, and I didn't have a voice at that time, because my whole book is about finding your voice, finding your voice. And so I thought, well, I'm never going to see him again, and I guess that's it. And but then gradually, and he didn't have any photographs, and yeah, I remember asking him, did he remember me when I was a kid in Africa? And there was my sister Patty and my brother Colin and younger sister little Paula. He said, no, I don't remember you, but I do remember my horses. So it was that sort of thing. It's
Wow.
like, oh God. But and then and he didn't have any photographs of any of us. And it was probably a few years later, and I just thought, this is terrible. This is our father, my father, and I need to find out who he is. So I wrote to him and just said, if you don't let me know who you are, I'm never going to see you again. And so slowly, what happened over a period of a few years, he started writing about where he was born, all the things I didn't know about him, about his accident, everything. And I think what happened, and I did say in my first letter, for me, writing has always been easier to write than speak. And so I think something happened. It was almost as if all those frozen memories thawed just by the act of writing it out. And so before he died, we had actually really connected. He gave me all sorts of things like the logbook during the war, right up to the very last, the sort of the flight that actually crashed. And he was a member of what they call the Guinea Pig Club, which is for pilots who had been really badly burnt during the year. And they were all guinea pigs because they hadn't done that transplant before. And so he gave me this little badge that has of a guinea pig. So it was very precious. And then he died maybe a couple of years after that. So that was just part of the journey, finding my father. But obviously, as you say in the book, there were just so many stories that was part of the journey.
Yeah, there's so many stories. I mean, obviously, this helped you out. This was your therapy, writing this book for you, and probably you found a lot of answers, a lot of questions you were answered, probably writing this book for you, huh?
That's true. And there were some memories that were really hard to relive.
Yeah.
And I had to go over them quite a lot of times. And the more I went over them, the easier it became. So yes, in a way, it was a therapy. And I knew I really wanted to get it published. It was important. It was something about having a witness to a particular life's journey, being heard, or whatever that takes, because I suppose as a kid, being one of 6, it was very hard to feel that you were being heard.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very important to me, although I had written a book before that, but it was very important to me to write this book, to have it in print.
Yeah. So when you were reaching out to your father, how about you, like Patty? How was she? Did she want to connect also?
Well, I think it wasn't so important to her. I think she was thinking, well, why are you doing that? He's a ruined man, he's not well. But there was something in me that just couldn't not. Even when he was very inappropriate, it was still, although I thought, oh, that's it, there was still a part of me that wanted to know about this person that I wanted to know about, from teenager onwards. But then obviously when I was doing that degree, it was important to question more about your life when it makes you look back.
Yeah. Who was guiding you when you were doing this book and going deep, especially with the relationship with your father? Somebody you could talk to, like, hey, I want to do this, because I'm sure there's some parts.
No,
I
just kept writing.
You just kept writing. There's some parts I'm going to find my father, and maybe somebody says, maybe, what are you doing, Jenny? But no, it was you just motivated to do it.
And it was encouraging, because when he actually answered the letter saying, that's it, unless you tell me who you are. I mean, I can't remember how long it was before he answered it, scrawled little writing. And it was so thrilling, it was, I think, because the first time I was so excited when he said, oh, come and stay with me. My wife's left me, and, and I hadn't seen him since a little kid. But then when that happened, I thought, okay, I'm not going to look anymore. I don't like this person. But then there was this tie, obviously he's your father. But once he started writing and telling me who he was, that then became the connection.
In the book, I know you did, because I did a little research on the book, even though I have to read it. And this is going to be the read of right next to our nightstand, which my wife and I will probably argue about. I know when you did meet him that it was a little place, if I'm mistaken, correct me, and then you had to stay over at night with him. You were staying a visit,
It was horrible.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just awful because, if I'd had a voice, because I'd never experienced a situation like this, I could have said, I'm leaving. I had a car outside his apartment. I could have said,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm leaving. But it was just so bewildering and shocking. And you
Wow.
don't think that afterwards. But actually,
Do you think some of this with your father not being around as a child, did that take you to the rock and roll rebellious teenager and go to the city and just,
It's interesting you say that because I get a feeling that there was a kind of an anger, that sort of drove me because it was like being abandoned really and never heard from him again. And I think that the way we grew up in Africa, it was like we were very feral. There was nobody looking after us. My mum was sort of, had this very damaged husband who just stared at the wall, and she was gorgeous and very vivacious and all that sort of thing. And then she had our youngest sister, Paula. And so I remember I remember just wandering around by myself, no shoes or anything. And sometimes you'd see a great big snake in the garage or, it was very feral. And I think that suited sort of the rock and roll world. It was a kind of wildness, and it was like kids in the playground.
Yeah. Out there.
No parents.
No, just you had your siblings. That was it. Just you guys.
Yeah.
Just you guys. How many siblings total? Now, how many in the?
My mother had 6 children.
Six
She had
children.
she had two of them are our stepbrothers from the second husband, but we all lived together and we were all very close.
Wow, it's a big family. Yeah. So you had 6 of you. So growing up, all of you guys were together. So that was you could talk to, you could listen to music.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
And I remember, music was very important to me from about the age of 8. And Patty was obviously loved music too. And
what were you
and
listening
I remember
to? 8 years old. What
Bill Haley, I think it was like Rock Around the Clock, something like that. But from then on, and I just knew when I listened to the music, I wanted to dance, and I was just little. And then Patty and I would start to learn. She was teaching me how to do jiving, And
what is jiving? What is it?
Jiving is like 50s dance.
Yeah.
It's beautiful to watch. If you've got a couple and they really know what the other one's doing, it's very cool.
Yeah. That's funny. So you guys would jive together. That's cool.
Yeah. So
then,
as I got older, sort of, Roy Orbison. But when I was 11, I was madly in love with Buddy Holly. I was a complete Buddy Holly fan. I knew every word of every song. And I remember at my school, there was this girl who was like a couple of grades higher than mine. And every break, she'd take her guitar out into the gym and she played Buddy Holly's music, always Buddy Holly songs. And I was totally thought she was wonderful. And I would just be there just loving, because she sounded like Buddy Holly too.
That's so funny. Buddy Holly. And so ahead of his time and the music he wrote, and he died at such a young age. I'm so mature. My favorite Buddy. What's your favorite Buddy Holly song?
Oh, doesn't matter anymore. There's so many. I mean,
mine's True Love Ways is my favorite.
True Love Ways. Yeah.
Beautiful song.
Real weeper. Yeah.
It's a real weeper. Anybody watching out there, please Google the song True Love Ways. It's such a pretty song. And of course, the Beatles did a great cover of Words of Love because it was Lennon's, one of his favorite artists was Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
He made glasses look cool because back then you had the bad boy look and nobody really wanted to wear eyeglasses. And Buddy Holly, he's the one who made it cool.
So cool. Yeah.
Do you still have any? Do you have any of your vinyl from when you were a kid? Did you hold on to it?
No, I moved around such a lot. And when I was married to Ian Wallace, the second marriage, and he was also a musician, and we lived in LA, although he was from England too. And he played with Bob Dylan and Don Henley and Crosby, Stills and Nash and all this. When we separated and I came to live in England, he, for some reason, I can't remember why, he seemed to have all the vinyl.
He did.
He sort of had that. So I never saw them again, because I used to have a lot of it.
You had a lot of it's funny. So you talk about your relationship. So you're married to Mick. He was the you guys were very young, what, 16, 17?
We knew each other when we were 16, almost 17. And he would watch me go to school, because he'd be in the sort of Notting Hill Gate coffee bar and waiting for go to the next gig. He'd see me coming into the coffee bar after school with all my school friends, and told himself that was the girl he was going to marry one day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You remember when you first laid eyes on Mick? That moment?
Yeah, he wasn't very well. One of my best friends at school, she had a major crush on him. Whoops. And she told me about Mick and said, oh, he's gorgeous and all this. So then she said, but he's not very well, so we must go to his bedsit, and I've got some grapes to take him. And because I was very nearsighted, I stood at the door, and all I remember seeing of Mick was this kind of blurry face, big eyes, and sort of the bedclothes up to here. And so for a while, and then she introduced me to him, and we'd go to the coffee mill and see him there. And then he asked me if I wanted to come to their gig. He was in this band called the Shanes.
The Shanes.
And the Shanes, Cheynes. That was his first band. And so we went on the train with him, my friend, and then when we were sitting down, and he was just about to set up his gear, because everyone had to do their own stuff, I noticed he put his foot on mine, and I thought, oh no, what about my friend? And so I sort of tried to grab my foot away, and the foot got tight and sort of more heavier. So I knew he liked me, but I was just being very careful, because I didn't want to. You don't do that, do you?
Yeah.
You know, if your best friend likes him. So that's how, and then we, became friends. And then gradually, after about a year, we got together. But by that time, I was modeling, and I'd just come back from New York. So yeah, we were very young.
Very young, very young. So New York, you went to New York. How old were you when you went to New York?
17. And did modeling there, and it was when Vidal Sassoon was just first there, and opening up his own shop for the first time. Patty and I went together, and we were both modeling. Folan Tuffin, who are designers that I worked for, that came straight from school. I got sort of headhunted, and so we were wearing their clothes. And then we had two other girls, and they came as well. And they were wearing the Mary Quant clothes. So it was the big British invasion. So it was a big deal. And so there was Vidal Sassoon, and there were, other people who were sort of from London, early London, swinging London. So it was a big deal. It
was a big deal. Style, fashion, music, it all went together well. Sometimes I feel like it disappeared in today's world, but it really was a time. It was a time. It was new. The styles from the 50s to the 60s. Great time.
And that's work being a model, being a house model for these two designers. All the clothes were made for me, which was great. But one thing at that time, that was the beginning of pantsuits. And so they gave me this really very smart red pantsuit with sort of silver buttons. And the first morning I woke up in Manhattan, we were staying at the Algonquin Hotel. Yeah. And we all came down to breakfast, and I was very shy. And there were these two rather grown-up models and Patty, and they'd been modeling for a while, and I hadn't. And when I came into the breakfast place, I was sent out because I was wearing pants. You've got to go and put on a nice skirt.
Really?
Yeah. And that's how, they weren't into fashion at that time. That's why it was a big deal, us coming over.
It was a big deal. Now, was this around the time when Patty met George, around that time that you both?
Yes, they'd met, and I'm not quite sure whether they'd got married then or not by then. Maybe not. That was probably 64, 65. But they were definitely together. Okay. In fact, she left New York. I had to carry on, and because George didn't want her to stay for more than a week, something like that.
So were you nervous by yourself? Were you in New York by yourself?
I think I think I wanted to go home, but I also thought, no, this is my job. I should be doing this. And, but it was fine. It was fine.
And at that time, what about Mick? How was he with you being in New York? And he
Well,
was
Mick, we hadn't got, let's see, we hadn't got together then. Instead, I went out, when he first knew me and liked me, I'd been going out with the singer for a while. I think just like first boyfriend, and he was awful. And then I went to New York. So I really grew up then. And when I came back, that's when I bumped into Mick, and then that's when we started our relationship.
So the musicians, see, I see a pattern here. Look, I'm like Dr. Therapist right now. So I see a pattern. It's you're going after the musician, the bad boy musicians you're liking over here. Because you Mick.
Yeah, I know, but see, Mick was very sweet and because he left home at 15, and he
That's
had
young
very
too.
supportive parents. That's very young.
Yeah.
And he didn't finish school. He just knew he wanted to be a drummer. That was it. And he had very supportive parents. They put him on the train with his drum kit to London. And he stayed with his sister in Notting Hill Gate. And that's where he started. He just knew that's what he wanted to do. But he wasn't a sort of bad boy. He wasn't like that real rock and roll, sex, drugs, and all that stuff. That was very early, innocent times.
Yeah.
But I think, but there was, I don't know what it was. Because he found me. It's just so odd that both Patty and I were with musicians. It was almost like that. We really got that. And I suppose because we loved music, both of us loved music and what it said and what it represented and how it epitomized a particular time.
Yeah, it definitely did. It definitely did. And then there's that scene. Once you get hooked up with that scene, the modeling, the music scene, it's almost like, okay, here's this scene that everybody's clicking with each other. And then you're in that circle because this is the only people now.
That's it.
Yeah. The scene. Yeah,
that's it. We would go to clubs. We'd go to these amazing clubs, and you just see other musicians, but there was no sense of hierarchy or anything like that. Or it was just like you knew you were all on the same wave, I suppose. You're all in the same wave.
I mean, in here, you got some fabulous photographs in this book. And of course, I'm going to put them up on the screen for everybody else to see. But over here, if you guys check this out, let me make my screen a little bigger for the YouTube people to check it out. Look at these great pictures over here. If you see this picture right here, right there, you know who the photographer is right there that did this beautiful photograph. That's Paul Saltzman. That's your trip in India right there.
That's right.
That's a great picture right there. God, even this picture, this is all natural lighting, and look at you right there. It looks like a photo shoot. What he captured with the whole lighting and the colors behind you. It's a beautiful shot. I love this shot too.
But it was which one?
Right here.
Oh yeah. So that me in the middle. There's Patty, there's Cynthia Lennon, and Maureen Starkey. And that was the Simone and Marika when the Beatles had the Apple shop. So I was working at the Apple shop right at the beginning before going to India. And that was great fun. That's where Donovan saw me. I'd only met him once before with Patty and George at their house. And I'd already come back from San Francisco. I'd been there for 6 months in 1967. I mean, before all the hippie stuff, none of us knew about it in England. Found myself there. Anyway, but Donovan came to see me in the Apple shop, and so started chatting about. He wanted to know about spirituality and about San Francisco and Maharishi and all this. And then he asked if I would come and hang out with him at his manager's house. A couple of times. The second time I went there, he said, "I've written a song for you." And he got his guitar, and then started singing Jennifer Juniper.
Wow.
And it was amazing to actually, yes, there he is.
Yeah.
And his beautiful voice, beautiful song. And I didn't know what to say because I thought, oh, this is like a declaration of love. And I don't know if I was there yet. So,
Yeah,
but it was just the most beautiful song. Still, even to this day, if I hear it, it just represents such innocence.
that's wonderful. I bet you weren't as impressed as when Corey sang it to you, right? When he out the
No.
Corey.
No, I didn't quite say.
I had to slip that in. That is so the flower power, the whole style, the hippie colors, that wasn't from England. It came from San Francisco, huh? The fashion.
Oh yeah, oh definitely. Because
Wow.
in England it was still, very the modeling and the more kind of chic,
Was it
Whereas
mod?
when I
Was the
went to San
mod
Francisco,
like was it like the mods look still going on in England at that
the
time?
mods and the rockers, yeah, yeah, yeah. So you had the mods who they liked different kind of music. They didn't like the Beatles, they liked the Rolling Stones, So it was sort of these kind of like gangs. Not sure what the rockers liked. I guess they just like rock and roll.
Yeah.
But going to San Francisco, it was so different because nobody was wearing all these lovely, beautiful, smart, lovely, but cool, relaxed clothes. It was very much hippie stuff, just wear anything and beads. And, it wasn't about fashion. It was about expressing yourself. So it was really interesting. It was really amazing. And of course, then I got to, I think as I've spoken to you before, go and see all those amazing bands like Big Brother and the Holding Company and see
Oh,
Janis
yeah.
Joplin just rocking away, the Byrds, just everybody of that time. So it was great because it was all about music and the Monterey Pop Festival, going there and seeing Ravi Shankar and
How
just,
incredible. How incredible. Ravi Shankar.
yeah.
I want to touch because there's so much to talk about. Ravi Shankar, he always smiling, such a happy person. What was your memories of Ravi Shankar?
Memories of him, especially when we left India, because I'd gone with Patty and George. George said, "Well, we're going to spend a couple of weeks with Ravi and see him on the road, on tour." And so we flew to Madras, and then we hooked up with Ravi. So we'd go to a lot of his concerts, and they were just wonderful. And there was the tambura player, Kamala, I think her name was, and Alaraka, who played the tablas, and we were just together. We were all of us together. And Ravi was always laughing. There was something about him that was so wonderful and warming. And, it wasn't such a shock to go from the Himalayas and then back to England. It's like we had this sort of little in-between time where we experienced something completely different and beautiful, very special.
Very special. His music is wonderful. It takes you to another place too.
Yeah.
It really does. It's
Yeah.
funny. I guess the Beatles really brought them to people to my attention. George Harrison, he brought it to my attention because he put big influence in his songwriting, which started probably around Revolver time. I think he started putting the sitar
Yes.
around that time.
Yeah.
I'm talking like one of those
Yeah.
crazy Beatle guys at the convention right now. I'm being like a Beatle nut at the convention, like waiting online, telling you everything you know already, but but yeah.
That was fun. That was so great. And India was great. And, just I could have stayed there forever. But then then things took a different turn. And I think that's what it felt like in my life. I seemed to be like a little leaf in the wind, and you just never knew where you would turn up. But somehow, looking back on it, I was in all the places that became very pronounced. And, now you wouldn't have thought that 50, 60 years later, you'd be looking at this stuff, 50 years. Yeah. So then, Mick and I got back together, and then we joined he was in Fleetwood Mac, and we all lived together in a big house, kind of commune. And the road crew would come, and sometimes they'd crash upstairs, and, it was just rock and roll, except Mick and I had these little children. And, their lullabies was listening to them all rehearsing downstairs in one of the rooms. And so then it became a completely different life.
Yeah. Wow, that's so cool. I mean, Mick when he started Fleetwood Mac, the name Fleetwood, Mick Fleetwood, this was all his. That was his vision, the band that he wanted to do. He decided, is that where it all
No,
came from?
that was Peter.
Oh,
Peter
I didn't know that.
Green
I didn't
started.
know.
Yeah, and he was because he's such an extraordinary, wonderful person. He
Mhm.
didn't want to have his name on it. He wanted Mick and John McVie's.
Oh, he
So
did.
that's why it became Fleetwood Mac. Yeah,
Wow, he didn't. Wow. Now, how come he didn't want his name? Was there a
yeah.
reason for it, or he just?
I don't know. He was an extraordinary, amazing person, and maybe he knew that it would hold him to the band, and maybe he wanted to be more of a freewheeler. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Wow, interesting.
Mm.
I didn't know that. God, what a story. You're over there with your children and all this beautiful music is being made. I mean, it's history right under your nose. I mean, the experience, I mean, in life, a normal person gets experience one experience like this, but look how many you went through, you know? It,
Mm.
it's
Mm.
after one. So you're now obviously you're out of modeling. You just decided to walk from modeling afterwards. It just wasn't something you wanted to do. You were just done with
I
it.
walked from modeling before. Yeah, I started feeling like it wasn't for me. I just had this thing. I had a sort of moment, like a kind of spiritual aha awakening feeling. And
Yeah.
that's odd because although I wasn't intending to go to San Francisco, it was interesting how a friend of mine was opening up a shop. So she said, "Why don't you come and help me with it?" So I was kind of drawn. It was almost like I think sometimes you can be drawn to. It's like the zeitgeist, that something big was happening, and it wasn't all about modeling dolly girls clubs and all that kind of thing. Suddenly it was like something bigger than us, and it was a questioning, and it was much deeper. And then I found myself in San Francisco and still questioning, but then everybody else seemed to be doing that too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was like the part of the zeitgeist, the kind of collective unconscious that was emerging. And so going
Yeah.
to India after that was just perfect.
After leaving India, did you feel more in tune with yourself?
Good question. I think what I felt was because meditate. I like meditating. It's like I'd
Yeah.
found that, so I had this thing. But I think in India, I felt more in tune with myself than I'd ever felt.
Yeah. You felt that
Almost
zen.
as if that's why I thought I could just always be here. It was like a real connection. And then it's like many things, you don't really take it on board because you're so young and you're still looking for things and looking at things. But that nugget, I think, kind of stayed with me and helped me through when times were really crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure you experience
Mm.
a lot of times crazy. Now, in the book, you go through it, and were you and Mick married, divorced, and then get remarried again?
Yeah, trying to make it work.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
The thing is, when you've known each other from such a young age,
Mm.
where you were just great friends and you were babies, really, and then you also have children together. We really wanted it to work, but it probably would have done, but there was so much at that time. That was when we were living in LA, and Stevie and Lindsay joined the band, and there's lots of drugs, lots of cocaine comes into the picture, and alcohol, trying to stay awake so they can continue, deadlines, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's very hard on the one hand trying to keep the marriage together, and on the other there's this enormous other animal that's kind of eating everything up. So it was very hard. We're great friends, we're still always friends, so it's nothing
Yeah.
left.
Yeah, he actually wrote a little nice thing over here around the cover over here. Everybody wants to check that out right there. I can't read it backwards, but this is a real treasure, and I gotta really thank you for sending this to me, and
Oh,
thank the U.S.
thank you.
mail to get it over here. Well, not the U.S. mail. Well, it went from the U.K. mail to the U.S. It traded hands, but it took quite a little time to get to me. But it's here, nice and safe. In the book, do you go more about your friendships now, also with like with Cynthia? I know with Cynthia Lennon. Do you talk about her in this book as well? That were you friendly
Yes,
with
I
her?
talk about her because often when we were in India together, she and I'd go for little walks around the ashram, and she would say that things were getting tough with John,
Yeah.
and didn't really know what was going on. And then, of course, when we went back, because Donovan and the guy called Magic Alex, who then came to India and I think kind of created mayhem. But anyway, we decided we'd go to Greece when we got back from India to do something nice, and Donovan wanted to go as well. And so Cynthia asked if she could go. So I saw Cynthia then when we were all in Greece together, and then obviously I told you before that it was very sad when she came back, and we sort of took her back to her house, and there was John with Yoko, and so that's what she walked into. So
Wow.
then she'd come and stay with me for a bit, and so there was a friendship. But then as time passes, I think that's we went to America a little time after that to live, and I think then she got married and she started her life. So I didn't really hear from her after that.
After that, yeah. She seemed like a very sweet lady. I actually have her book
Really
that
sweet.
she had written. Yeah, she seemed
Really.
like a very sweet lady. I could picture the pain what she went through at that moment, walking in with John and Yoko. It must have been the worst moment in the world at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're with
Yeah.
her. It must have been just a whole uncomfortable feeling. Just
Oh,
like,
right.
what do you,
Yeah.
there's no words to even
And
say it's going to be okay. What do you say,
no, I mean, and then I'm standing there, and John's lying on the sofa there, and she's kind of trying to do the cooking and carry on, but still obviously very freaked out. And John's sort of with his little toes up going, "Hello, Jenny," with his toes. So it was like a sort of naughty boy being caught out by
Yeah.
his mother.
Yeah.
Didn't care,
Yeah. He just didn't care. At that point, just checked out. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
here I am.
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
so the book now so this book goes deep into, so you're going into the 60s, you're going to your childhood, you go into your father. It tells you about your life today. Like, tell us what the viewers,
And
Jenny,
also,
today.
what happened when I took my degrees when I was living in LA,
Yeah.
and which was tough because I was not very good at needing to go out on the road because your husband wants you to go out on the road. This was when I was with Ian Wallace, but actually standing up for something for yourself, like what do I want, was really tough. That was all part of a sort of change. And so I went to college because I'd never been to college,
How old were
when
you
I
when
was
you went
young.
back? How old were you when you went back to school at this point in your life?
I think I must have been about 34, 5, 6,
That's not
maybe
That's
6.
not easy. Not easy going back.
No, I passed out on the first day because I was meant to say something and I just hadn't been in that situation. We'd always known each other, all kind of like a gang. It was like all the music people. It was totally different. Here are like normal people. And I passed out. They had to carry me and put me on a table and to lie me out. And
Really?
it was big deal. It was such a big deal.
Because you're coming from another
then
world. You're coming from this whole other world. This whole
yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Well, you don't have much of a voice. So it's good. It was interesting and it was inspiring, and it was, I felt my brain was creaking, having to write all these papers. I'd never learned how to write a paper or anything like that. But it was very inspiring. And then I did take a PhD, and the dissertation became a book, which at that time then it was published by Simon & Schuster, called Musicians in Tune. And that was when I interviewed all the musicians about the creative process. And once we got a few of the sort of really ones that are family, lots of other musicians, blues musicians, jazz, everything. So that was brilliant, just kind of interviewing them. That was very inspiring. And so that book came out. And after that, I thought I've got to carry on working. So that's when I got a job at a place called Sierra Tucson in Arizona. In Tucson, it was a treatment center. And so I started working in that treatment center. And then I took it back to England and got people from England to go to it. And then I went to another treatment center in Tucson. So I did that. I was in the addiction field for about 20 something years.
Wow.
So then I started my own company that organized workshops for people in recovery or people with relationship problems or self-esteem problems. And I'd get therapists to come over from the States and take these workshops, and I would just set them up. So I was in that world, completely different from the rock and roll world, for many years.
Wow.
And that was inspiring to see how people change.
How proud were you of yourself accomplishing finishing school, getting these degrees? You had to
It's
been.
very hard.
It's
It's very
very
hard to do that.
nights up studying and all this, and
Yeah, but you saying how proud of yourself, it was very, I don't remember once thinking, oh, I'm so proud of myself.
no,
It
no,
was a
really.
sort of, I think I was just so in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it meant so much to me. And, when I'd go, they'd have these, what would they be like once a year? You'd have, because I got a lot of people from England to go over, and young people. And so we'd have, I don't know, just a kind of celebration at the treatment center in Tucson. And I was often in tears, because I'd see the people when they were really strung out or hung up or, whatever. And then you see them afterwards and, they've got the 12 steps and they've got a spiritual awakening as well, usually. And it's like they've regained a life. So it was very moving. It was very inspiring.
Yeah, and you're taking a lot of it home with you. How could you not? How could it not affect you when you listen to other people's stories? It's just
Yes.
it's touching. Um,
It's touching.
it's very touching. And then you have your own life. Well, how do you help? Well, first of all, a person that wants help, they're going to want help. They have to be there to want it, And but how do you help those people that say they want to be there, but they're not there? What do you do with them?
Who don't want to take the leap and actually go to treatment.
Yeah. They
Well,
act
it
like they're
depends.
there, but
Yeah, and it depends because you can tell, and I think I learned this because I decided not to be a therapist because I thought I would want to be a therapist, and I thought, no, that's not quite my thing. But I learned a lot, and I think about being a good listener, you can then connect with them, and even if they're feeling like, oh, they don't want to do it, if you connect with somebody and you say, this is going to really help you, most would go there. And if they weren't, sort of like seriously in need of inpatient, then they would go to one of the workshops. So
that's it.
yeah.
Jennifer Juniper, right here. Here's the book. I want you guys right in the description. We'll put the link where you could click and get this lovely book. We'll click it up here, right here. And Jenny Boyd. Jenny, I got to thank you for coming on the show today. Again, it's always fun
really
having
nice.
you. Oh, I love having you
you.
coming on. We made a friendship, you and I.
Yes.
Already? We made a friendship.
All right.
On that note, everybody, we will see you later. We love you. Jennifer Juniper, it is out now. Please click on the description. And also you'll see that little bottom, subscribe, share it, like it. Coffee Talk Adika, and Jenny loves you. Bye, everybody.
It's Coffee Talk with Adika. Nothing rhymes with that but chicken tikka. We name drop here. We're Stephen and all his friends.
Where can they get this book?
Well, definitely if they go to my website, which is thejennyboyd.com. They can get that in signed copy if they like, and also get it signed if you like. And so it's around in bookshops. And I don't know, here in England now, our bookshops are opening as of yesterday. So I don't know, wherever all of you are, if you've got bookshops, hopefully they can get it. So,
I recommend everybody get it signed. I say they just go to the link, click on it, which is got PayPal on there as well, everybody. You click on the link, which will be in the descriptions, and actually get it signed from Jenny right there. I think that's something that you want to have in your collection.